Alright guys, so here we are with part 2 of me covering the Five Nights at Freddy's Retrofit Theory and the Unwithered. If you didn't watch part 1, I would recommend watching that one first, especially if you don't know anything about the Retrofit Theory at all. You could probably get away with watching this video first and then going back to part 1, but I'd still recommend watching that last video first on the Retrofit Theory. This is honestly probably one of the most controversial / infamous theories, right next to the burn trap / mimic / Afton and all that, right next to it in my opinion, honestly. So since this is a very confusing topic with many moving parts, don't get mad at me in the comments, don't make your entire personality about hating the Retrofit Theory or the Unwithereds and all that. This video is just my opinion and I'm throwing out a bunch of different possibilities. I'm not saying anything is 100% confirmed, canon to the law. If there's anything that I missed in this video or part 1 last video, then let me know in the comments because I'm going to be combining part 1 and part 2 into one big video and I'm going to be adding more stuff to that video. The next thing I want to talk about is the evidence / history of the Unwithered / original animatronics. Firstly, I want to quickly talk about the 8-bit sprites and how they've got the buttons on them, which aligns with the withered animatronics. But these are 8-bit sprites, they're very inconsistent as well, and like in the FNAF 1 location they've got the buttons as well, which would mean the Unwithered animatronics definitively existed and performed, although not in the way we thought. Why did that kind of rhyme? And I've heard people say that the Unwithered animatronics were the ones that got destroyed by William Afton, and then Afton got spring locks, and then Henry ordered all the safe rooms to be closed. And then after that, the Unwithered animatronics were turned into the classic animatronics. And at least to me, that's just total bonkers. That's just so weird. Like, I don't understand how that could work, because a lot of people are saying that the reason why William destroyed the animatronics because he wanted the remnant. Does that mean he took the remnant and then used it elsewhere and then he came back? And then, but then how did the classic animatronics possess Steel then? Because he can't take the remnant out of it. That means Molten MCI isn't true. I know some people don't believe that's true, some people do. But then how would the classic animatronics still be possessed after they got destroyed and became the kid spirits to taunt William Afton and then make him go in the spring lock suit in that minigame? Will they just all of a sudden go back into the animatronics? Or was it just the remnant that was powering them? It just doesn't make sense, and I know that people have also said that the buttons connect to the adventures from FNAF World because the clock ending connects to this minigame where you set up the puzzle pieces, the instructions to get the good ending in the clock ending of FNAF World. It's so confusing saying that, but I don't think the designs for the adventures or the minigames really mean anything. Just Scott did whatever he wanted because the adventure Withereds, they just reused the classic adventure designs, just slightly altered with their models a little bit. When in reality, the withered animatronics just aren't withered classic animatronics, they're their own designs. Now, people have used these adventure designs as also evidence for the Retrofit Theory, and I just don't believe in that as well. I think this is just the stylization, because look at Springtrap. I mean, that's Springtrap. I mean, he looks cool, but he's not accurate to game Springtrap. And I mean, also look at Adventure Shadow Freddy and Adventure Phantom Freddy. They're both based on the Adventure Classic Freddy model, as you can see here. They don't reuse the altered Withered Freddy model, which is the one in the top middle there. If those two adventures were based off Withered Freddy, like how it is in the games, then the Phantom and Shadow Freddy models on the top there, the top row there, that's what they would look like. That's how they should look like. But no, Scott just took the classic Freddy model and used him for Shadow and Phantom Freddy, the adventure versions. And I don't want to see people connecting this to Help Wanted and then also trying to bring in the merch, like the mystery minis and all that. No, just no. Scott did whatever he wanted with these models because it was just a fun RPG game. He just did what he wanted to do because he loves making RPG games. This is just the stylization of the characters. It doesn't mean anything. And the same thing applies to the 8-bit mini games. Scott's 8-bit style is just very strange. They're most likely actually 3D modeled. They're not actually 2D sprites. If you look at them closely with how the pixels line up, they're very strange. And also, Golden Freddy in FNAF 2, he looks like this, and Withered Chica, she looks like that. Like, that's Chica, that thing. And Spring Bonnie, he can somehow move his mouth. It's just a static piece. It's not anything that's got like facial movements. It's not muscle or anything. How does his mouth move? And the answer is it doesn't. It's just the stylization of these mini games and how Scott did them.
I'm gonna get you. What's the England flag doing here?
So the first real thing I want to talk about here with the history of the original animatronics is in Secret of the Mimic. So there's an audio log from Edwin where he's talking about the animatronics that were designed by Fiona were so close to being finalized, and now they've all of a sudden just changed them, and he's just so confused, and he's calling the new designs creepy.
Aren't they insane? The look of these new animatronics is Fiona's design, and they're great. Oh, first they approve the art, then they approve the proofs. Now they change their minds when we're so close to final. Why would they change them now? Are they pulling my leg? The new concepts are, frankly, creepy. No, it doesn't matter. I'm not changing a single bit of her work, and they can't make me.
He's frustrated that Fiona's work is being changed, and that no, he's not going to change them at all. He wants to keep them. He's just going to continue working on them. Now, there are many ways to interpret this, but I think the main one that a lot of people have, including myself, is that Edwin is talking about the classic animatronics, the prototypes that he's working on, being changed into the unwithered animatronics, and then he finds them creepy, just like how Ralph/Phone Guy said that Fazbear Entertainment thought the original Foxy looked too scary, so they changed him to be more kid-friendly. So Withered Foxy, and by extension the other withered animatronics, were associated with being creepy, and that's what Edwin talks about in this audio log. And this makes sense, but the main problem with this is that it talks about the new animatronics being Fiona's designs. Does that mean Fiona designed the classic animatronics? This would be one of the many things that some FNAF fans would not be happy about, mainly the ones that are kind of stereotyped into being the older fans, or the toxic fans, or overprotected ones, the ones that I talked about in my other video. Because for a long time, pretty much everyone for around 10 years assumed the classic animatronics, everything was done by Henry and William. I thought that maybe the classic animatronic designs, a lot of the designs for the characters, except for like Chica and all that maybe, were all sent in by Henry and William to Edwin to work on, and then after Murray's Costume Manor was shut down and then Henry and William got all the assets, they basically took Edwin's work, which was already based on their own work, they refined that into the classic animatronics and all that. But if these new animatronics are Fiona's designs, then how much input did William and Henry put in? Maybe Henry and William just sent in Fredbear and Spring Bonnie, whilst Fiona created the characters of Freddy, Bonnie and Chica and Foxy? And then Henry and William approved those designs, and then maybe they made the classic animatronics, they sent those in. Edwin maybe refined them a little, there's a bit of back and forth, they created the classic animatronics, and then after that, Henry and William changed their minds, they created the unwithered animatronics, and then they sent those in, and then Edwin got mad about those. Yeah, that's possible, but Edwin would really have to be attached to the classic animatronics, because then why would he be so upset? Because it's still Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, Fiona's animatronic characters that she created, so then why would he be that upset? He must have a huge connection to the classic animatronics, unless it's because he has to work and start all over again. I don't know. So it's definitely possible that this log was talking about the unwithered animatronics and the classic animatronics, but we just don't know to what extent Henry, William, Edwin, and Fiona had in creating and designing the characters and classic animatronic designs. Another thing this could be possibly related to is the Monty Springlock suit and the Bubs Springlock suit. But this specific audio log is talking about animatronics and not Springlock suits. There is another audio log from Edwin talking about how he got a change order from Henry about the Springlock suits. It's possible that these two are related because they're both down in the R&D area, of course, and there's changes that make no sense to Edwin with how he's been working so hard on these creations just for them to be changed at the last minute, and he gets pretty frustrated at this.
I got the change order from Hen last night. None of this makes sense. I'm almost done. Why change it now? It would be so much easier to keep using the spring locks. Just hire some teens to wear the suits like we always do.
I don't know what the change order in this one would have been, aside from maybe just stop working on the spring locks, because if it was changed to the new animatronics that was being talked about in the other audio log, then wouldn't Edwin be at least somewhat ecstatic for Fiona because it's her designs? I would understand that he's upset since he's almost done and that he has to all of a sudden change again, but he would at least say, at least Fiona's designs are being used this time. I don't know, unless Fiona designed both the Monty, Springlock, and Bub, and the classic animatronics. I don't know, it's so confusing, let's just move on, I don't know. The last thing I want to talk about for Secret of the Mimic is in Edwin's office in the computer terminal. There's options for accessing puppet designs and accessing alt Fazbear designs. So, Was Edwin originally going to be involved in making the puppet? Maybe he did some work on it, maybe he didn't, but then he just never got around to it for obvious reasons. And what are the Faz alt designs? I've seen people say that maybe it's the Funtime animatronics, maybe it's the toy animatronics, but I don't really think it's either. For the toy animatronics, I mean, it definitely could be, but I don't know if they really existed this long ago. I know they date back to around 1983 because they were in FNAF 4 with the Mangle in Elizabeth's room. And then there's also the toy animatronic figurines that appear in the playground in the 8-bit minigame. Now again, Scott's sprites are a little bit inconsistent, but in this specific case, Scott intentionally made Toy Chica's beak be removed on the figurine, and he even called it out in one of the messages on FNAFworld.com, I believe, during one of these FNAF live streams where there was a bunch of theorists, around 6, I believe, at the time. He was updating at the same time they were streaming. Man, there was a lot of nostalgia there, and I think this was maybe a little bit before Dream Theory, around the same time, because of FNAF 4, of course. But Scott, of course, made the conscious choice of putting the toy animatronics there, with Toy Chica missing her beak and Mangle. Now, you could also say that these technically aren't the toy animatronics. They are toys, but they're toys of the classic designs, or the Unwithered designs. Like I said, Scott's sprites are pretty inconsistent. That toy Bonnie there, it kind of does look like the brighter toy Bonnie, but we've seen classic Bonnie with the brighter blue colors. And that tiny toy Bonnie sprite, it really looks really identical to the Bonnie that appears on Fredbear and Friends, and that's definitely classic Bonnie. There's no way that's toy Bonnie on there, because it just doesn't make sense, because classic Foxy's with them. The other animatronics look like the classic animatronics, or maybe even the Unwithered animatronics, if you really want to say. The tiny toy Freddy there, yeah, he's kind of in the brighter brown, and he's also, as Smike would put it, he's also kind of fat. It looks like he's eating a bit too much pizza. He's fat. Maybe, but yeah, he's just a really generic Freddy Fazbear design. Like, it could be either. It could be any of them. It could be the toy animatronic version of Freddy. It could be classic Freddy. It could be Unwithered Freddy. It's so generic. The Chica there, it does look very similar to the sprite that was used as Toy Chica on stage in FNAF 2 in the Save Them minigame. And they're both missing their beak and the pink waist piece, so they definitely could be connected. And Toy Bonnie as well, I'm only just realizing this now. The Toy Bonnie, he does kind of look like the tiny Toy Bonnie that was in FNAF 4. They look kind of similar, but I also just realized, like I said, Toy Bonnie is in the purple color, like Withered Bonnie as well in the Save Them minigame. They just I think Scott just reused that color. He didn't really care, trying to make it more accurate. Whilst in the FNAF 3 End of Night minigames and on the TV for Fredbear and Friends, the original Bonnie is in the bright blue. He just swapped the colors around. Oh my goodness. Classic Scott. So if you don't want to say that these 3 figures are the toy animatronics, they're actually the original animatronics, then the only piece of evidence we have of the toys existing early on is that Mangle. So I still feel like maybe the toy animatronics did exist to some extent back then. It's definitely possible, but we just don't know for 100%. So it could be the toy animatronics, but I really don't know, because FNAF 2 kind of implies that the toy animatronics are new, they're brand new designs, but then we know they kind of existed beforehand, so we don't know to what extent the toy animatronics were around as designs in 79, 1983, around then. I really don't know. Was that just a prototype of Mangle in Elizabeth's room? Were these toys commercially available, being sold at Fredbear's Family Diner? Do they still have lore relevance now? I don't know. But since these alt Faz designs are right next to the puppet, maybe it could be the toy animatronics. But then again, we know the puppet was around with the original animatronics because of the minigames in FNAF 2 and also in FNAF 3 kind of as well. But it definitely could be the toy animatronics. But it could definitely also be the Unwithered animatronics. Maybe it isn't related to the audio log from before with the creepy concepts Edwin was talking about. Maybe it's related to that. Now, if it's those creepy designs that Fazbear wanted to replace the classic designs that Edwin was working on, the main thing is that these are called Faz alt designs. They're not Faz replacement designs or anything, or Faz new designs. They're Faz alt designs, alternatives to the originals. They're not replacements. What is this then? It might not be the Unwithereds. It could definitely be, and I'm just digging too deep. It probably is, honestly. It probably is. But ignoring the fact that if we're digging more deeper into this, this definitely could tie back into the toy animatronics, because, yeah, they could be considered alternative designs, because they're very different from the classic and the Unwithered design. So, yeah, it could be them. Another thing this could be related to is what I was talking about at the end of the last Part 1 video, with an early version of the classic animatronics with Backstage Freddy. It definitely could be that. It would definitely fit the title of alternative design, or maybe Edwin was actually working on the Backstage version, the early versions of the classics. Probably not, because we see the classic Freddy head down there, the big head, and we know the prototype Freddy model had an unused head model, which was only seen in the promotional videos. Although that head could have been removed from the game for a reason, but I don't think these old designs are the classic animatronics, and that Edwin was working on the Backstage Freddy and early versions of the classics. I feel like it's more likely the other way around, if anything. But even then, these may not be an alternate version of the classic animatronics. It definitely could be, but I don't know. We just don't have enough details. The last possibility of what these things are is probably the least likely, and it's possibly the Funtime animatronics, but I really don't think that's the case. I still think William did them alone, because there's no mention of Sister Location at all in any of these, and then Fazbear designs, when it should be something like Circus Baby's designs, or Circus Baby Pizza World designs, or something. And the entire point of the Sister Location Funtime animatronics, they were made to capture Remnant after William discovered it, so it wouldn't really make sense for them to be the Sister Location animatronics unless it's some early version of them. It doesn't make sense. Alright, so we're done with the Secret of the Mimic stuff that I wanted to talk about. Let's go into FNAF 2. Like I said before, in the Night 2 phone call, Ralph talks about how the original animatronics in the back room are from the previous location.
Those are from the previous location.
And also on Night 1, he tells you to forget everything the player might have heard about the old location and how it left a negative impression of the company, and that the location was eventually left to rot.
Now, I want you to forget anything you may have heard about the old locations, you know. Some people still have a somewhat negative impression of the company. That old restaurant was kind of left to rot for quite a while.
However, the FNAF 2 location is said to be a vintage pizzeria reopens given new life with a grand reopening. Also, on the carousel in the FNAF 2 location, you got the original dark blue, purple, whatever, dark blue Bonnie on there, and you got the original red Foxy on there, and the paper pals. They're based on the original Unwithered animatronics, because they got the buttons on there, and they're the darker colors, they got no cheeks. They're definitely the original animatronics. You got the original Bonnie and the original Freddy paper pal. I want to quickly point out the Freddy paper pal. He kind of looks like the bear from the original, like dog-shaped bears and all that from the original. But and there's also the kids' drawings. It looks like they're the original animatronics, because look at Chica. They're huge mouth. They're like withered Chica, and then you got two versions of the main gang there. It looks like Scott just reused the same drawing there, the same layout, because it's the same thing. They just got extra details added onto them to be the toy animatronics. So I don't know, but I just find it weird that Scott decided to put the original animatronics here. I don't know if this can be used for evidence or anything, really, because the toy animatronics, yeah, it's just a copy and paste of the original animatronics there. There's definitely two versions, so Scott acknowledges that those are the original animatronics on there, so I don't know. And then Golden Freddy's there. Why is he there? Is that did someone see the Dead Children's incident of William using the Golden Freddy suit, and that's him speaking to the kids, luring them back maybe? And he's got his ear on there, and that probably doesn't mean anything. We're probably just digging too deep. I just don't know to what extent we can use these as evidence, because Scott definitely intended to put that Golden Freddy there as for like some sort of lore reference, but what about the other images? It's just so confusing, guys. I don't know. You can tell I'm losing brain cells from this stupid retrofit theory. Whatever. Let's continue. So there's remnants of those original Unwithered animatronics in the FNAF 2 toy animatronic pizzeria after it reopened. So either the paper pals and the carousels were brought in from the previous location that was mentioned by Phone Guy, or the Unwithered animatronics did perform here, but then they closed down and then they reopened with the toy animatronics, and that's the grand reopening. Now, although the FNAF 2 location with the toys is described as being a vintage pizzeria given new life, like I said before, and it's the reopening, at the same time, when Ralph is talking about there being no doors in the FNAF 2 location, he says it's because it's a quirky, modern design of the building. He says the building is modern.
Something else worth mentioning is kind of the quirky, modern design of the building. You may have noticed there are no doors for you to close.
So what I believe is the FNAF 1 location is where the Unwithered animatronics performed originally. The first thing is, why would Ralph assume that the player would want to close the doors? That's because that's how it was done in the previous location, the FNAF 1 location. Now, this just may be Scott's way of talking about how FNAF 2 is different from FNAF 1. In the previous game, there were doors. In the second game, there isn't. It's almost definitely that, but the question really is just, does this line of lore significance at all? It probably doesn't, but I guess it's just something to note, I guess. I'm probably just overcomplicating it and looking into it. I've just fallen into that trope, unfortunately. Well, too late now, sadly. Also, Phone Guy mentions that the building cannot run out of power and that only the flashlight can, so the place will not go dark. Why would he mention that unless the previous location did that? But again, it's probably just because Scott wanted to explain the differences between FNAF 1 and FNAF 2. Another reason why I think the FNAF 1 location is the original location being talked about is, of course, it's a very small building. The original location could definitely be reopened on a smaller budget later on in a couple years. It's also not in good condition. You can see there's spider webs in a couple places, and also, of course, in the FNAF 3 End of Night minigames, there were a lot of mouses slash rats everywhere, and there was the rain leaks that caused the spring locks to go off in the safe room. But that's assuming that that minigame takes place soon after FNAF 1. But the main piece of evidence why I think the FNAF 1 location is the original location is, of course, all the hallucinations that happen there. Why would there be a bunch of hallucinations? Because there was no killings in that building if it wasn't the original location. There weren't any other killings at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza after the dead children's incident. All the other killings happened because of the sister location, Animatronics, basically. I mean, it's definitely possible for hallucinations to happen in the FNAF 1 location, even if there weren't any killings, because it could just be because of the spirits or something, or because of the person. If it's Mark Lafton, he could just be having hallucinations. And FNAF 3 was a replica building. It wasn't an original location. It was definitely mapped out to be a sort of walk through one side to the other attraction, even though its map was there in Secret of the Mimic for some reason. Maybe there was just an error and oversight, I don't know. But there was still a lot of hallucinations there, but that could be because of all of the props from the haunted locations being put there, or it could also be because of the phantoms there with Springtrap. I'm not sure if I think the Easter eggs can happen on night 1 though, but it could be because of Springtrap and his aura, and the phantoms as well, or it could also be just because of the bad ventilation. It's definitely possible, but the FNAF 1 location could definitely be the original location, and also if you were taking the week before into account, the heads from the early Fredbear days could make sense, maybe, yeah. Now, Into the Pit does have a different location, but then again, that's a books universe, it could be different, I really don't know. Maybe that is the actual original location. Maybe there was some other location in between one of the other games. Maybe there was one before, maybe there was one after. But it wouldn't really fit unless they went into one location, they changed back to the other location. There's so many possibilities. Maybe the FNAF 2 or the FNAF 3 location were actual pizzerias. I don't think so, though. Maybe. Yeah, the FNAF 3 map was in Secret of the Mimic, but that could be an oversight. And also, it doesn't really make sense to be a pizzeria. This one long tube system that you just walk through. There's no dining area or anything, or kitchen. It doesn't make sense. And also, the FNAF 1 location was in Secret of the Mimic, so it definitely existed early on. It would make sense for it to be the original location. Now, also, in the week before, I don't think it's mentioned that the location that Ralph is working at currently, the FNAF 1 location, is the original location. I don't think it's explicitly said. I don't think so. So, maybe it isn't, because you'd think he would mention it, but I don't know. Again, it could be a books universe, but still, I feel like that would be something that would be carried over. I don't know. Also, assuming the Unwithereds exist, we don't know when they were swapped out. Were they swapped out at that original location? I feel like they did perform at some sort of Fredbear's location because of Fredbear's and Friends and all that. It would make sense if they performed at a Fredbear's location. Maybe they performed there with the classic animatronics design with UCN Fredbear, maybe. Maybe there was some Fredbear before UCN Fredbear. UCN Fredbear had the longest runtime on stage with Spring Bonnie and Freddy, the classic designs. They were the most popular, and then after that, Fredbear's closed. Or maybe they did receive the Unwithered design then, and there was Unwithered Fredbear slash Golden Freddy. Maybe, maybe not. Or maybe they were swapped out when the original first solo Freddy Fazbear's Pizza location with only Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy. Maybe that was when they were swapped out to the Unwithered animatronics from the classics. And also in one of the newspapers, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza had sanitation issues with apparently mucus and blood coming around the eyes of the mascot animatronics. So maybe after the missing children's incident, they were actually the classic animatronics then, and then after that, to try and cover it up, they were swapped out with the withered animatronics, but still, the animatronics still smelled bad, and the sanitation issues continued. Now, there's no real evidence for any of that, there's just me throwing out a bunch of ideas. But I think what's also as likely is that because of these sanitation issues, assuming that it was always the Unwithered animatronics at this location during the MCI incident, then maybe that's what led to the animatronics breaking down. And because of the bad press and the bad sanitation, all of this combined, this was the final nail in the coffin. Basically, the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza closed its doors, and then it had its reopening eventually at the new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizza with the toy animatronics. Because Phone Guy also says that originally they were going to repair the original animatronics, and that implies that the original animatronics broke down in the original location, the previous location, so they were going to repair them. That's why they started retrofitting them, but they just decided not to because they look so ugly. Now, if they were broken and withered in the original location, I really don't think they were broken to the extent they are in FNAF 2. I really don't think they were. I don't think Bonnie lost his face in the original location, lost his arm. I really don't think that's the case. I think that was most likely a case of them being used for spare parts. And also, I remember someone brought this up, I don't know where, but someone's pointed this out, and it makes a lot of sense that if the withered animatronics were being half built, they were never finished, then why would Withered Bonnie have half of his arm there, like the wires there? It looks like it was just taken off and it used to be there. Same thing with like Chica's hands, and there's also a bunch of rips in all the withered animatronics. Why would they be in that state if they were just recently stopped being retrofitted and all that? So if the retrofit theory is true, maybe it's just that the withered animatronics were complete, but they just were never on stage, and then they were used for spare parts. I could see that, but I think they were definitely completed. They definitely were finished. There's no way they were just half done. I also want to again bring up the carousel and the paper powers with how maybe they were brought in or made during the retrofitting process when the original animatronics were going to be used, but then they just weren't changed after the toy animatronics were introduced. Now, I did say before that maybe the Unwithered animatronics did perform at the FNAF 2 location, but Phone Guy's line saying that the idea at first was to repair them, maybe this isn't the case. Also, in the Night 3 phone call, Ralph refers to Withered Foxy as being the first one, so does that mean Withered Foxy is the original Foxy? The Withered animatronics are the first ones?
They tried to remake Foxy, you know? They thought the first one was too scary.
I really don't know. Maybe he's just talking about the characters, because Phone Guy says he loves the old characters, including the original Foxy, but then he calls the Withered animatronics ugly, so...
But they were just so ugly, you know? I loved those old characters.
Does he love the old characters, as in... he thinks Classic Freddy and Withered Freddy are the same character, they were both Freddy, but then he thinks Toy Freddy is not Freddy? It doesn't really make sense either way. Also, if we're considering the week before, if Phone Guy is glad that Fazbear Entertainment restored the animatronics to their classic versions, is he talking about restoring the 1985 Unwithered designs to the original 1983 around that whatever, the classic designs? Is he referring to that? Is he referring to restoring the retrofitted withered animatronics to the original classic designs? Or is he talking about using the classic designs instead of the toy designs? I don't think he's talking about the toy designs since the toy animatronics were scrapped, obviously. And I honestly don't think he would be talking about the retrofitted withered designs, assuming the retrofit theory is true in that scenario. Because in the retrofit theory, there was a reason why the Unwithereds never came to be, because they were just so ugly and they were bad. That's why they were never finished. Then would Ralph really think they would have gone and completed those scrapped concept withered animatronics, those creepy designs, those concepts that were scrapped for a reason? Would he really think they would go and do that? The only reason Ralph would probably think that is depending on how far the retrofitting originally went, and if it would have been easier to complete the withered animatronics into the unwithered animatronics, or revert back to the classics, which would have been easier. And I don't think they would have gone far, because Ralph says they even started retrofitting them. He says they started retrofitting them, so I don't think they would have gone far. And the way he says they even started, it makes me think that it almost came as a surprise that they even started doing it. It's surprising that they even started retrofitting them at all. So they probably didn't even get far into the retrofitting process, and I don't even know how they would have even been able to replace all 4 of those animatronic costumes if the retrofitting came as a surprise and they even just started doing it. It's a surprise there anyway. So I don't think Ralph would have had any worries, and even if he did, he probably would have mentioned the withered animatronics being retrofits in his sentence instead of saying classic designs, because that means he's acknowledging the withered animatronics as other designs and not unfinished retrofits. This is me overanalyzing everything again, but since he said classic designs, that means he needed to differentiate it from another design. And yeah, it could be the retrofitted withered animatronics he could be talking about, yeah. It could also be the toy animatronic designs, yeah. But I feel like he would be talking about an animatronic design that appeared on stage and was finished. If classic Freddy was always the same up until he got retrofitted into Withered Freddy and was never finished, then why would Ralph clarify that he's glad that they were restored to their classic look, not their original look? Doesn't that imply that the classic animatronics weren't the original look or the only look that the animatronics had? And we even know that this is the case either way because of Backstage Freddy and how Ralph says that those are early versions of Freddy Fazbear from the Fredbear days. They're different. He definitely knows there are other versions of the animatronics. So yeah, it makes sense that he doesn't say original look because those original animatronics didn't always look like the classic animatronics. They were definitely different at some point. Alright, I dug too deep into that one. I'm going to apologise for that last bit. I just went too deep. It's probably not that complicated. I went too deep. I went a bit unhinged. I apologise for that. That's my mistake. I will probably leave this in the video. I don't know. As for the names of Endo 1 and Endo 2, I always just assumed that those names were out of universe. I don't think people would have been calling those Endo 1, Endo 2. Maybe. But I've always thought Endo 2 was the first one technically, and then Endo 1 was technically the second one, but we just call them Endo 1, Endo 2 because Endo 1 appeared in FNAF 1, Endo 2 appeared in FNAF 2. It just makes more sense to go with that naming convention. It's kind of a similar case to Purple Guy. No one called William Afton Purple Guy, but we called him Purple Guy, I feel like. And he was called Purple Guy in FNAF World, but he's never called Purple Guy in Universe, as to my knowledge, and yeah. This could also apply to Golden Freddy. I don't think Golden Freddy's ever called Golden Freddy in Universe anywhere, so does he count? I don't know. Maybe he's in one of the other books, I think, maybe. Nah, I'm pretty sure in the novels he was just called Golden Bear or Yellow Freddy, and then the new kid, he was just called Yellow Bear, like how he was called in the FNAF 1 files, Yellow Bear. I don't think he was ever referred to as Golden Freddy. He was kind of... I don't know. Again, this is just getting confusing, more overcomplications. And even then, those are the books, those aren't the games. In the games, I really don't think he's called Golden Freddy aside from FNAF AR, really. He was never called Golden Freddy outside of the UIs for Custom Night and all that. So yeah, I don't think the Endoskeletons were ever called Endo 1 or Endo 2 anywhere, up until like FNAF World even. They weren't ever called Endo 1, Endo 2 in Universe anywhere. Maybe in like the week before, I don't think it was. But continuing on with the Endoskeletons, Endo 1 does appear in Secret of the Mimic a lot. His body parts were definitely there. Now the question is, does this have lore significance, or is it just a case of Stillwell reusing assets, which is completely fine, but we just don't know if this is a lore reason. I'm not even sure if that actually was exactly Endo 1's model, or if they just changed it up a little bit. Maybe some of them were changed up. I'm not sure about the prototypes down there as well. Do they count as Endo 1? Are they prototypes? So Endo 1, it would kind of make sense. So Endo 1 could definitely still be called Endo 1 without the retrofit theory. And also in Secret of the Mimic, there's a couple, I think Endo 2 does appear. I think it's Withered Bonnie's foot that's in, I think, was it in Edwin's house or something? I know it was there somewhere. And it was just called Withered Bonnie Foot in the files or something, the name of the asset. So I don't think there's any lore significance there. But because Endo 1 appears everywhere, and especially prominently as the prototype animatronics, the classic animatronics, Endo 1 being called Endo 1 still could definitely make sense without the retrofit theory. Now, I do want to quickly talk about the video I made before last time with the toxicity in the FNAF community, and there's a lot of it surrounding the retrofit theory and the Unwithereds because, I mean, you've watched this video so far, I mean, you understand how complex it is and why you can see it so many different ways. People see it so many different ways, they get really hateful and toxic about the theory. They say, oh, the Unwithereds are so stupid, they obviously don't exist, or the Unwithereds so obviously do exist, look at the Withereds right there, people are so dumb. I mean, it gets tiring, man. I mean, I keep seeing it. I mean, not a whole lot actually, but when I do see it, it's very annoying because it's pretty toxic. It's not a whole lot, but when it is, it's pretty strong, I have to say. And the main thing I'm just going to be saying is just think whatever you want to think, because there's a lot of stuff going on with this theory. There's so many moving parts. I'm not sure if I'm overcomplicated. I've probably overcomplicated it, and I've probably shown some of these tropes in this video, or possibly multiple videos, or probably 2 videos, unless I make one big one at the end as a compilation. But I definitely probably got a bit aggressive at times, and I probably did a lot of things that I hated, like just bringing evidence out of nowhere, which I think I should clarify. I should have clarified before what I think. I just think some of those are just possibilities. They're just things just to try and connect things. There's no real evidence behind it. They're just random thoughts. They're not supposed to be anything huge. It's not like I'm 100% saying this is definitive or anything. They're just a bunch of random thoughts that I have, and I'm not going to take them too seriously, and I'm not going to be too aggressive about it. I probably was a bit before, taking it a bit too seriously, getting a bit too heated, being a bit too aggressive before. I apologize for that like I did before. I already apologized once. I feel like I should apologize again. I don't want to encourage any toxicity in the FNAF community, especially with this subject, because a lot of people are tired of theories like this that overcomplicate things. I definitely overcomplicated things in this video, but again, it is kind of complex. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it's all the other theories and people's thoughts on things that have also complicated things further, because you can see things in so many different ways. So in the end, after all this overcomplication of the retrofit theory, I honestly can't make any sort of concrete story or any story that I feel confident in. The only near definitive things I can say, in my opinion, at least, is that the original animatronics were the classic designs before the Unwithereds. They were on stage and performed before the Unwithereds, but the Unwithereds did exist and did perform after the classic animatronics. The original animatronics were turned into the Unwithereds, and then the Unwithereds became the withered animatronics, and then the withered animatronics were then turned back into the classic animatronics in FNAF 1. Alright, so that's going to be closing it out for the retrofit theory. Remember to keep the comments civil, make sure to not be disrespectful or be hateful or toxic in the comment section. I really just don't want to see that, so please don't do that. Please just be understanding of all points of views, because it is very complicated one way or another. Self and fan inflicted or not, it's complicated. Yeah, that's it for this video. I've been recording for about 4 hours. I've only got 50 minutes of footage or audio recording, but that's why I've had to make these 2 videos, but I probably will make this one mega compilation if you guys just want to sit down and listen to me yap about bear, retrofit, funny, withered, cool withered, unwithered, classic thingy. Yeah, bye, I guess.
What's the England flag doing here?